Okay, we did this. Sorry. We spoke about the driving questions. All right, Kabbalah diagrams. Okay, here you have two diagrams, which look interesting, right? When you just have a look at it, you don't see much. But actually, Kabbalah is covering the entire distance from God until us. So, which means God is spiritual completely, right? Or he can affect the physical, but he's spiritual. The angels are spiritual. We come from spiritual world. So how did we end up like this? That's the question. in the heavens there isn't physical things. So what's the distance? What's filling that distance? So this is where these diagrams come in, and we're going to see more of that. These diagrams kind of show us what happened from God himself until us, and not just us, but us being involved in mundane day-to-day things. So that's what Kabbalah is filling. It's filling this space, right? So it all starts actually when you look at these diagrams, you can wonder what are these diagrams? What are they? And the truth is that the diagrams are the answer lies within us. Because besides, this is another very important point as a way of introduction, and that is Kabbalah is not just up on high. Whatever there is up on high, it's mirrored in us. So that's why it's that relevant, because it's actually whatever there is up there, the same thing exists inside of us. So we're not just going to be talking about abstract things, we're talking about practical things, because they are in our soul, right? So that's where we have the first text. Yeah, mirror, reflection. Yeah. So our souls are reflecting the spiritual realms, and we're going to talk about how that actually translates. So in text number 1, I'm going to read it in Hebrew, and then maybe someone can read it in English. Ki ha'adam dugma elyona. This is from Rabbi Meir ibn Gabbai. וכל מה שבעליונים ותחתונים כלול בו, והוא סוד צלם אלוקים, בהיותו בדוגמת הדברים האלוקים, בסוד מבשרי, איך זה אלוקה. Naomi, would you like to read that?
And this is what he's saying from the flesh, I envision God.
Yeah.
God.
Basically, yeah. Tselem Elokim, which means in the image of God. God made us in the image of Him, and that's why we are able to look inside of ourselves. From my flesh, I envision God, which means that I can look inside myself and look at my character traits, and I can see how they help me understand godliness. Just like a child which comes from parents will have the characteristics and the attributes of his parents, so too the soul which comes from God will have the attributes of God, of godliness. It's actually an important terminology, godliness, and that basically is not God himself, but what comes out of him. And that's the whole. We're not going to be actually talking about God himself, because God himself you can't define, you can't talk about. He's unlimited. So the moment you say, if you say God he's clever, then you've limited him. If you say he's fast, if you say he's strong, all these things are limiting him. So Kabbalah actually talks about godliness, right? Which is the tools he uses to relate to something outside of him. Tools he uses to relate to us, to the world, to the angels. Because before this happened, there was just God, which obviously you can't define. It's in Hebrew, it's called atzmut. Atzmut is translated, probably the best way to translate is something in relationship to itself. So anything in relationship to itself. So let's say it's hard to imagine, but let's say you only had a relationship with yourself and you didn't have any interactions with anyone else and you didn't have any bills to pay or anything to do. The feeling that you would have is atzmut, just relationship to yourself. So that is what God was, before he decided to have a relationship with other beings, us included, and spirituality included as well. So we're talking about godliness. I mentioned this to explain what godliness is. That's what godliness is, kind of his toolbox that he uses to create and to relate to beings outside of himself. Okay. Now, if you have a look at the map in front of you, you have a map. On this map, you'll see, I don't think you have it I'll send you the PDF. On this map, you see something called the Seder Hishtalshalut, which means how do you translate? The divine ladder. Okay? So you have the divine ladder. And on the right side, you'll have how it is the divine image, the human soul. And on the left side, you'll have how it is in the godliness, in the order of devolution, it's called, order of devolution, right? So all the way at the top, you have Or Sof, and you have the divine infinity and the human soul. But we're actually not going to talk about that. We're going to go all the way to the bottom. As I said, we're going to be starting bottom up. And we are, you can see where it says lesson 1. This is what we're going to be talking about today. This section, the physical, the 4 worlds on the left, and how they are in us, thought, speech, and action. Okay. Now, where does this all start? Where does a person, let's say you do something, right? Let's say you want to build a house. Where did it start? What's the first step of you walking into your house, your new home, right? So it all starts with pleasure. Pleasure is what causes the will, which is what causes the thought, which is what causes the speech and the action and everything else. So only if you derive pleasure from it, will you pursue it. Okay, so we know that it's a very pleasurable thing. It's a human instinct almost to have a home, to have somewhere where you can call home. That's why our rabbis say that if you don't have a home, it's like you're dead, because a homeless person loses it. You need to have a place where you can go home after a long day. You need to have a shelter. You need to have a place where you feel good, right? So this is kind of the hierarchy of behaviors. It starts with pleasure, and then from the pleasure, it eventually reaches action. Okay. After the pleasure, you have a desire, right? Once you know that there's a pleasure in the home, you have a desire. Okay, now I want to have a home. Okay, now once that happens, you have to justify it logically. So logic only comes after pleasure and desire. First, you know that you have pleasure in it, then you'll want it, and then you justify it.
Sell it to yourself.
Yeah, sell it to yourself. Convince yourself, exactly. Convince yourself and convince your wife, your kids, the other people in your life that this is the right thing. Hi.
Hi.
How are you? Oh, wow.
Went in and Laura was like, give me the phone.
Oh, wow. Very good. Here you go. This is for you. You didn't miss much. Just the introduction. So we're talking about the hierarchy of human behavior, how that happens, because we said that the human behavior is a reflection on godliness, on the ladder, the divine ladder, we're going to call it. Say the Hishtalshalut. All right, so then you justify it, right? So the truth is, most things we do aren't logical, if you ask my opinion. So if you say, if you grab a pack of chips and you just eat the chips, it's not like your first thought logically, I want the chips, start, you have to set. First you had a will to do it, which the will comes from the pleasure that you're going to receive. Yeah, the taste, it just fits now. Like when you wake up in the morning, it doesn't work. You don't want the chips, yeah? When you first wake up, at least most of us, right? You want something else. And then at 2 p.m., you want the chips. So first you have the will, and then you have to kind of convince yourself that I actually, whatever. Same thing with clothes. Today I'm going to wear this, tomorrow I'm going to wear that. I keep it simple, black and white, don't have any problems. I just have a closet of shirts, a closet of pants, trousers, and that's what I use. So I don't spend time in the morning, deciding. But for some of us, for the more stylish in the room, more than myself, it kind of, you just feel that you want that today, and you can't really explain it. It's kind of, the logic comes after. Okay, because willpower is higher than logic. That's why, by the way, animals are stronger than humans and faster than humans, because we have seichel, we have our mind, which, that's not the only reason, of course, but we have our mind, which cools us down and says, think it through. Don't just go charging through the doorway. Think it through. And kids, same thing. Kids can. They want something all the way. Something small happens, they go mad, and something small happens, they'll be over the moon. Us adults, we have the mind. Our mind's developed already. So our mind is a blessing and a curse, because it, obviously it's a blessing, but it's a curse kind of because it cools us down sometimes from being so passionate about things. Anyhow, that's all the side point. After the justifying process, then you explore about the house, back to the home. You explore, where do you want your home? How would that work, and how would this work, and so on and so forth. The next is you make a plan, you rethink the plan, you speak it over, then you sign the papers. Okay. Right. That is the process of a home. Right. Text 2. Kirsty, you came just in time. It's on page 7. Can we ask you to read it? And I'm not going to do the Hebrew.
There is no way I can see that one.
That's too small.
It's a blur from my computer.
Okay. Hayden, you brought your glasses. Text 2. Yeah.
God fashioned a ladder planted on the earth, whose top reaches into the heavens. This ladder's rungs serve as channels through which the flow of divine energy can devolve degree after degree in a constant pattern of progressive coarsening until the flow can be received at the last extreme of existence.
Yeah. So this is the key term, the first key term. If you have a pen, you should probably write it down. And that is Seder Hishtalshalut, which means, you see how it's spelled? It means system of devolution, right? Shalshelet is a chain. Hishtalshalut is the same root as Shalshelet, because it's like a chain. They're all intertwined. It's not like one ends and the next one starts. It's a chain like which is connected. All the links of the chain are connected. So Seder Hishtalshalut means a system of devolution, evolution, you can call it.
Does that mean everything that we have here comes from above?
Yeah. And not just it comes from above, but it still exists above. It mirrored above, right?
Mirror.
Yeah, it's a mirror, the divine mirror.
What you're having here is already originates.
Yeah, exactly. Everything. Actually, if you want to go so far, every movement in this world is mirrored above. Like every blade of grass that even moves. Today there was bad weather. So think about for a second how many blades of grass. Right, as we spoke about this thing. So obviously there's many levels before it got to the iPhone, but it goes all the way back. Okay. Okay, on computer. Confused.
Channels are like energy again.
Yeah, of course. The channels are energy. So, what is Kabbalah? A sophisticated exploration of the order of devolution. And the how of Kabbalah is Seder Shtalshalut. Consists of material realities. Okay. Into it. We have on page number 8, and right. Did we do this? So bad for the people on Zoom. Oh, okay, there you go. So the disclaimer is, can we ask Mickey, would you like to read it in Hebrew? Text 3. Yeah. So Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov is quoted here, and he taught that when you're studying Kabbalah, you have to be careful not to look at the ideas as literal. So it's called hafshata, which means stripping the ideas from their physical meaning. It's not like which means that when we talk about the Seder Shtalshalut, when we talk about the chain, the divine ladder, when we say one thing is higher than another thing, we don't mean physically higher, right? We mean higher in spirituality. For example, right? You can talk about, you have like the boss and the employee sitting in the same room having a coffee. So you say the boss is higher than the employee in the office, but it doesn't mean he's taller, because the employee can be taller. It means that he's higher up in his rank, right? So higher means it's more spiritual. It's less egoistic. It's closer to God. That's what we mean when we say higher, right? So be very careful, always to remind ourselves not to translate this in a physical, in like just a physical, in a physical way. And here, that's what he's saying over here, in these words. Rabbi Shabtai Halevi Horowitz, the Shalah, is telling us that that this has to be viewed as spiritual, right? Now, why is it important? Why does this all matter? All right, why does it matter? Why do we need to study the chain, the ladder? What is the relevance? What is it? Why is it important? So the truth is, because when you study that, you can help yourself a lot better. So it all translates in helping yourself, in being able to develop yourself, because you can know the root of everything. You can know the root of any feeling or anything like that. It really helps with that. And that's what Kabbalah is. As we mentioned at the beginning, it's not just enlightenment, spiritual. It's not about escaping. It's about making it relevant, integrating it to your day-to-day life. And actually, the Kabbalists say that we cannot just affect ourselves, but we can actually affect the Seder Hishtalshalut itself. We can affect the divine ladder. We can affect the divine ladder, the divine chain with our actions. Okay, so it works both ways. Right. As a summary from what we said until now, that Kabbalah can be defined by discussing the divine the divine the divine network between God and our world. That's the Kabbalah, that's the definition. And how through stripping all the concepts from the physical, and when we are aware of the supernatural background of everything, we can see and we can have it influence our lives. Just like we had the problem with the computer before, the challenge with the computer at the beginning. And because I don't know much about computers, I couldn't help us much. If I would know more about computers, I would understand computers, then it probably would work way quicker. You have to have someone like Ma'ar come in to rescue us and help us out, right? The same thing in Kabbalah and the same thing in life. If you see the background, if you know the background of everything and see how everything works, you can help yourself a lot better.
The Kabbalah is the software of this world?
Yeah, exactly. The Kabbalah is the software of this world. It's the blueprint. It's the code, the coding, right? I have no idea what coding is. I have no idea. But the Kabbalah,
Metric.
yeah,
Who's the programmer?
God. God's the programmer. That's and what we can do, he allowed us to study a bit of his coding, a bit of his an insight, small insight. All right. So okay, wonderful. Now we looked at the course, the map of the course, the map, and we're gonna start from the very bottom, and we're gonna work our way up. We're going to talk about something called Beria, Yitzira, and Asiya. Right? Beria, Yitzira, and Asiya are three terms of creation. And in short, Beria, Yitzira, and Asiya are called Bia. It's the first letter of each of those words, Bia. If you want to say it quickly, Bia. Bia is another key word, which is Beria, Yitzira, and Asiya. And we're going to translate it. Don't worry, we're going to read about it. Don't walk out on me yet. We're still gonna, Anyhow, we're on page number 9, text number 4. This text is from the Zohar. The Zohar is actually the main work on Kabbalah. The Zohar was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which lived 2,000 years ago during the time of the Romans, the destruction of the temple. He hid in a cave for 13 years because he rebelled against the Romans with his son Eliezer, and he wrote the Zohar. Right, the Zohar has many books. It's like this big on one's shelf, and it's if you just open it up, you probably won't understand much. That's why we have classes and Chassidut and different teachers and teachings to help us work through it. So the text goes like this. I'm going to read in Aramaic and tell me if you can see the difference between Aramaic and Hebrew. Be'eis bei uf hachibria va'alda barasiv. Bahu kavoidila eis bei yitzira va'alda yitzartiv. Bahu kavoidila eis bei asiya va'alda uf hachi bavar nash ksivasisiv. Meheve iu kugavna dahu kavoidila. So it's written in Hebrew words, but it was actually the Yiddish of then. So it's like the spoken Jewish language of 2,000 years ago, Aramaic. So the Talmud is written in Aramaic. Some of the Kaddish is written in Aramaic. Anything which they wanted people to understand, they said in Aramaic. It's like, if you compare it to Yiddish. So God's glory includes Berea, and God bestowed this onto the humans. God's glory includes Yetzirah, and he bestowed onto the humans, and Asiya, and he bestowed it onto the humans. So that the humans is rendered in the image of the supernal glory, right? So we learn about here 3 spiritual worlds. And these worlds are the lowest of the godly chain, and they are Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya. The roots of the words is bara, created, bara. Yatzar, do you guys know what Yatzar means? Yetzirah, Yatzar means to fashion something. Doesn't mean fashion and like trend.
Shape.
It means to shape something. And Asiya is to create. It's like to form it in like a physical way, to do it. So Asiya is our physical world. Higher than that is Yetzirah, and higher than that is Berea. So those are 3 worlds. We're not going to talk about the 4th highest world, because the 4th highest world is for the next class. But yeah, here you go. Bara created, Yatzar fashioned, Asa made. And these, you can have a look at them in the map, and you can see what they correspond to. We're going to talk about that later. And these are the 3 stages of development. Actually, in the morning, every morning in the prayers, we say, Elokai neshama shenafachta bi tohorahi. God, the soul which you blew into me is pure. Ata yitzarta, it's the same things. You created, ata barata, ata sita, whatever. Forgot it. Sorry, I say it every day, but I forgot it. It happens. Mickey, maybe you can help me out. Yeah. So it's talking about the soul, and it uses these 3 levels. So there's Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Bia, write that down. Now, why do these 3 worlds exist? What are they all about? And what transpires therein? We have to go back, all the way back, to answer the most important question, and that is, what did creation accomplish? What was God missing before he created the world, right? And the difference between, so what's the difference between before creation and after creation? So the ultimate difference is creation introduced physical matter. That's the simple answer is creation introduced physical matter. Before creation, there was no physical matter, right? In this world, we have flowers, trees, mountains, people, cars, and all of that doesn't exist in the spiritual world. Right, obviously, we believe in creation, right? That's why we're that's why if you don't believe in creation, then you can just, none of this is relevant. This is obviously based on the premises that we believe that the world was created something from nothing. Yesh me'ayin, ex nihilo, right? Not like just the evolution of, right? So, by the way, it's actually not contradictory, because even if you believe in evolution, how did the first physical thing come about? So, like, what happened before that? So that was all itself, would have to be created. But we're not going to go down there now. That's for another time. But besides creation, besides physical things coming about, there was something else which happened. And that is something called yeshut. Yeshut is another key word. Yeshut means existence or ego. So things which feel independence, things which feel independent from God. So before God created the world, everything was part of God. Everything was spiritual. It was one with God. It was part of the oneness. It was annullified. And now that he created something, now that he started creating, there is yeshut, which means there is things being brought, identity, right? We're going to talk about that. Don't worry, we're going to explain that. And it didn't happen in 1 minute, right? Rome wasn't built in 1 day, and the physical didn't happen in one. It was a process. Okay. Just like you have the fetus, which starts as an embryo and grows. First it's like just a little, nothing. I don't know what it is. It's an embryo, and then it slowly develops parts, and then it grows a little bit more. There's different stages of pregnancy, and then finally it's born, and then he's got some growing up to do, of course. But even within the pregnancy, you see it's a process of where it's almost nothing before, and it ends up being born into this dynamic, talented, human with intelligence, which can destroy the world. You think about it, just from one, it's the biggest miracle ever. So the same thing applies over here. The physical didn't come about in 1 day. It was a process. Right. Some slides. Embryo, fetus, physical maturity, and those correspond to the 3 worlds. Beriah, which is the most spiritual of the 3 worlds, that's the embryo. Fetus is Yetzirah, which is being formed. And Asiya is the full physical, right? So it's actually they're very similar, because Beriah is kind of a world which exists now, but it exists prior to higher than our world, the first of those, and that is the first world with an independent existence. Okay. Potential is in the world higher than Beriah. Not Tzilut. We're going to learn about next time. Beriah is already something. Okay, so it's already some type of independence from God. Happens in Beriah, but no form whatsoever. No form, no intelligence. Doesn't even it doesn't even consciously understand that it's something outside of God. Right, like the embryo. And then you have Yetzirah, which is already a form, just like the fetus. It's already being formed. And then Asiya is the full-on physical baby. Yeah, and that's the physical world. Yeah, and actually our world is even lower than that, and that is the physical Asiya. But that's just within Asiya. There's the spiritual part of Asiya, and there's the physical part of Asiya. So where do you think all the angels are? The angels, most of them are in Asiya. They're in the physical. They're just the spiritual part of the physical, right? The soul has roots, high roots. But anyhow, this is the 3. That's the 3 worlds. Bara, the creation is something from nothing. The first world, Beriah, is the first step when there was nothing, and now there is something. Okay, the next one, and that is the first existence outside of God. Yetzirah, Yatzar is already exists, and it's giving its identity. It develops an identity, and Asiya is already the task completed. Independence, self-awareness, and stuff like that. Okay. Right. Summary. Again, a summary. We're going to do a lot of summaries because it's very complicated, and you want to keep track. You want to stay on track. Creation introduced Yeshut. Yeshus is a key word. Is one of our key words, and that is identity, something with its own identity into existence. Oh, thank you. It's okay. And there are 3 stages of the development of Yeshut, right? And that is the mild in Beriah, the more intense in Yetzirah, and the maximum in Asiya. Okay, and these names reflect these three realities. Okay, so we have the parable of the pregnancy, 3 stages of the pregnancy, and we have the 3 worlds, Biyah. So you have, I think, 3 keywords: Seder Hishtalshalut, the divine ladder, or the chain, or the whatever, the evolution process of the evolution. The Bia is acronym for Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, the 3 worlds, and Yeshut is self-identity, is when something is independent from its source. Okay, we're going to talk about that a bit. Yes.
Everything on the screen is says in past tense.
Yeah.
Does that mean that everything is already being created and that's it?
No, it's because it's talking about the root of the word. You're talking about the Hebrew, barai, and because it's the root, it's bringing the root of the word. The word bariah is bara, and Yetzira is yatzar, and so you have the root of the word in Hebrew, the shoresh. Yeah, yes, it's not because so this brings us to another concept, and that is because God is not constrained by time. So it's not like he did something and then he's finished and now he's just sitting back. He's actually constantly doing it, and he's higher than time. So whatever happens, it's like it didn't happen. Like it's like it all happened in one split second for him. All the history of humanity and everything. Yeah. So someone says, well, how can we have free choice if God already knows the future? And that's the answer. The answer is he knows the future because for him, the future's already happened. It's not that he decided for you. It's just because he created time and he's higher than time. Right? So that's ultimately the answer. But this itself is a big topic. Now, why does why does the Yeshut, the Yesh, the existence, why does it need the 3 stages to develop? So the reason is because the lower the world is, what does it mean it's low? It means the distance it has from its source. Okay, so when we say Asiya or Asa is the lowest, it's because it's the furthest from its source, from God. So the closer you are to God, the less you feel yourself. Right? It's like when you come into a king. Back in the day, there was like real kings that were people were awestruck they were in awe when approaching the king. You didn't feel your own identity near a king. The closer you got to the king, the more unnullified you became. So the same thing with the world. The closer they are to God, the least independence they have, the less independence they have, the less self they have, awareness they have, identity. Now we have a text number 5. Tam, would you like to read text number 5?
There are 3 ones. Berea is the first introduction of Yeshut, an independent self-concept. However, existence only develops into a complete Yesh when it reaches the 3rd stage. The reason Yeshut develops gradually is because the initial stage of existence remains close to God, and his presence is very much center of his work. The Berea devolves into Yetzirah, where the presence of God is concealed. Finally, Yetzirah devolves into Asiya, where God is completely concealed. At this point, existence becomes a true Yesh and gains a complete sense of self-being.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, to help us understand this, we're going to use an analogy, right? An example of 3 14-year-old teenagers to help us understand. So you have Sarah, okay? Sarah is the first of our teenagers. Sarah's mature enough to realize that she's independent. She's a person on her own. She's got her own identity. But she hasn't really developed that yet. She doesn't understand what it means. she can say, I am not my parents, but it's hard for her to imagine her life without her parents. She can't make choices. She doesn't have much of an independence. Okay. The next one is Rachel. Rachel's the other extreme. She's independent. She's like an adult, even though she's 14. She's already getting on the process of getting her driver's license. She can express herself to every detail. She can explain to people who she is, what she wants with her life. She's good. She's, completely independent. And then you have Rebecca. Rebecca is the third daughter who is in between. She's in between Rachel and Sarah. She's has some type of maturity, but not as much as Rachel. Right? Now, why does this happen? Generally, how does it end up being like this? Right? What is it? It comes from the parents, usually. And one of the reasons is because the proximity that the parents had to the children beforehand, right? So Sarah was completely sheltered, right? She couldn't the parents barely let her out the sight. They were protective. They were completely covering over her identity as an individual, right? And that's why at 14, she doesn't have much independence. Rebecca is the opposite extreme. Her parents let her, figure her own stuff out, make decisions, grow as a kid or getting older. And Rachel was, the opposite. Rebecca's in the middle. Rachel's the other extreme. Her parents were not involved. I mean, they were involved, but, minimally. This is a parable to explain these three worlds in their level of independence, right? So the more dominant God is, the less of an identity, the less independence you have, right? So the higher the world is, the more unnullified it is before God. The more unnullified is self-surrender it has, okay? But actually, the parable falls short from the message, because in the parable, it's actually preferable to have more independence. The kid with the more independence is more preferable usually. The more it can, you can go out into the world and accomplish more. But in the parable, it's more the opposite. The preference is with the more spiritual worlds. But that's the side note. And obviously we're not carried away with a metaphor. The metaphor is a metaphor, and it should remain as that. The metaphor doesn't always fit. We're going to bring a lot of metaphors because it's kabbalah. We can't understand anything without metaphors, but it doesn't always fit in all its details. Page 13, we have the next keyword, and that is bittul. Bittul means surrender, suspension, nullification. And its definition is a subdued sense of self due to being absorbed by something overwhelmingly impressive and the desire to become one with it. And that is the opposite of yeshut. So on the one hand, you have yeshut, which is the self-identity, self-observation, and bittul is thing. Now, neither one nor the other is good on the extreme. It's about the balance. No one's telling us to be completely nullified, and at the same time, obviously, you shouldn't be completely self-absorbed. But you have to find the balance between being aware of your strengths, aware of your talents, but at the same time remaining humble.
Rabbi, Yeshua is everything or just humans?
Everything. Okay.
So can you give me an example of Yeshua or Rachel, Rebecca, and Sarah, just to understand it a bit deeper?
Yeah. So Rachel has the most yeshut because she's the most independent. She feels herself the most. Or something like a scenario. like a scenario. I mean, it expresses itself in everything Rachel does. She makes decisions on her own. She doesn't think about her parents the whole time. If she goes away on a trip, she's not going to be on the phone with her mother for half the trip. She's going to, and her mother's happy about that. She's like, okay, Rachel, you're an independent youngster, and you've got this, you know?
Also, you should have got completely left it alone.
No, the reason why she has Yeshut is because her distance to her parents. You understand what I'm saying? That's the root, that's the source of the Yeshut.
So we are more independent now in our generation than the first generation of Mount Sinai?
I don't think, I mean, yes, but no. We're talking about our entire world is got the ultimate Yeshut because of its distance to the spiritual, because of its distance to God. So the higher, like Kabbalah is not talking about the history of Jews or of humanity. It's talking about the history, the spiritual history. Like,
So angels have less.
yes, they're aware of God constantly. So the reason why they're more spiritual is because they're closer to God, not in distance, but in awareness. Yeah.
Would be less independent.
Actually, the neshama is even higher than the angels.
It's closer to.
Yeah, but that's one part of the neshama, which is the root of the neshama. But yeah, like you have a bonfire. Like you have a bonfire, and you light a match, and you bring it closer to the bonfire, and you put it into the bonfire. Or sorry, a candle. You hold the candle in the bonfire. So did the flame disappear of the candle? Didn't disappear. It just lost all its self-identity because it's completely absorbed with something greater and more powerful than itself. So it completely got bittul. It's the opposite of yeshus. Doesn't have any self-identity. So the higher you are, the closer you are to the fire, the higher you are to your source, the higher you are to God, the less yeshut you have, the less self-identity you have, and the more awareness of God, and the more bittul you have.
Are you saying that is that ego?
It eventually it's ego, yes. It's ego, of course. It's ego. So ego is not a bad thing. It depends how you use it, right? You got to have some type of ego. Yeah, I mean, you got to eat, you got to drink, and you got to stick up for yourself, and you got to be aware of your strengths. So ego is a good thing if you use it the right way. But that can be manipulated and corrupted into becoming a show-off and just being completely self-absorbed and only seeing yourself. And the key to having a healthy amount of ego is realizing that everything you have is from God, but He gave it to you. So not denying, you're not saying, "Oh, I'm no good." That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to realize that you're good, right? And develop your talents and realize that you're either an artist or this or that, but realizing that this was given to you as a gift.
Realizing that not to eat.
Yeah. So not taking it for granted. That's what it says about Moses. It says Moses was the most humble person to ever live. It says in the Torah. Now, what do you mean? How could he be the most humble? That was his strength, that he was so humble. Because he's told himself that I'm great. I'm great. He knew he was great. He saw he was talking to God. He did all these miracles. But he said, if someone else got these talents, they would do a better job. It's not me. It's God giving it to me. That's the key. Okay, bittul. Now, a story about bittul is back back to Europe. There was a chassid, a great teacher called Reb Pesach Molestovka. Try saying that. And they had a late night farbrengen, it's called in Hasidic culture, which means how do you say farbrengen? Hitvadut. A gathering where you inspire each other, not with study, but with a bit of alcohol, singing, and sharing, opening up your hearts and sharing words. So this is a common practice in Chabad until today, in yeshiva, every week or so. After the learning's done at night, guys sit around like this. The teacher's here, no books. Everyone's got a bit of alcohol, and they sing a song, and they get up and they warm up a bit, and then kind of to let everything sink in, everything that they studied. You want to, make it so more relaxed. People can talk, not just the teacher. So there was a Farbrengen like this, and they were talking about the idea of bittul, being, not egoistic. And it was in Russia. It was late at night, and it was after the curfew or something like that. And after the late night meeting, the late night Farbrengen, the students went home. One of the students was walking, and and a police officer saw them. And the student was in a state of spiritual upliftment, I don't know, enlightenment. He was, and the police officer called out in Russian, "Kto idiot?" which means, who's going? Who's walking there? Who's there? And the student replied, "Bittul idiot." Bittul is going. And that was his response without realizing. And the police officer thought he was a mashuga and just left him. But the idea was that the student was, at that moment, not even self-aware.
Was drunk.
He was drunk on spirituality. Yeah, he was probably a bit drunk as well. But I've gotten drunk and I've never said that to a police officer. He just wasn't in a position to respond with his name because he didn't feel his own identity at that moment. That's at least the message we should be taking out of it. Now that we've spoken about that, we have to go on and talk about the jump to the physical. These three worlds, these three realities develop, and once they develop, our world can come about. Asiyah can come about. It becomes possible. Right? Because if there's no yeshut, if there's no self of identity, you can't have creations. You can't create. What differentiates everything? What is the common denominator between every creation in this world? Is that it's independent, or it feels itself independent. It's aware of its independence, right? So no one feels its source. Some more than others, right? People feel their source very, very rarely. Sometimes, when something bad, God forbid, happens, then you reconnect. You think about life. You think about where you're coming from, where you're going, but it's not a usual occurrence. In order for the physical world to be able to have been created, to be able to exist, it has to be apart from the spiritual. It has to have gone through these three realities to be able to come about, right? But, sorry. Yeah, it is the end. We're the end. We're the end of the chain. We're the end of the food chain, or the end of the hierarchy. So obviously we're just talking about these. Before Bariah, you have another whole ishtalshalut, another whole ladder to climb until you get to God, right? Which we're going to talk about, but but what we're saying is that we are the end product. At the beginning, there was a thought to create us. Now, some type of, whatever you can say, thought. It's not really a thought for God, but it kind of was aroused in his presence, in him. So the whole kabbalah is explaining how do we get from there to here, to my iPhone, right?
It's a good thing he's saying that you're away from God.
Very good. Yeah, of course. You can't exist. You won't have an ego. You won't eat. You won't sleep. You won't exist. In order for there to be creations which are independent, There had to have been a process dividing the completely spiritual and the completely physical. And that is Kabbalah. That's what Kabbalah is explaining to us. That is the Hishtalshalut. And we're talking about the last 4 levels, which is the physical Asiyah, which is our world. Asiyah, Yitzirah, and Bariah. Bariah is the first point where there is something independent, outside of God, so to speak.
The Big Bang.
I don't know. Big Bang. What? It's a big deal. Then about the Big Bang.
Bereshit.
I mean, yeah, it's before Bereshit. It's the moment before Bereshit, before God created. Is yeah, Bereshit is the start of Asiyah. That's true. Okay. But now, as we said, these worlds, it's not that they existed and they don't exist anymore. We're not talking about like a planet that existed before our planet. They exist now, and we can visit them. We can visit them by tapping into them, by involving ourselves in such actions, in such things, in such meditations. We can visit those worlds, right? So you don't need drugs, God forbid. You don't need alcohol. You don't need anything like that to be spiritual. You can actually do it with your own God-given gifts. How cool is that, eh? Yeah. When we sense God's presence, we can live in Yitzirah. And when we are overwhelmed by his presence, we can live in Bariah. They are states of mind that we can achieve, right? Right. And that is, when in Asiyah, God feels somewhat distant from us. Yitzirah is sensing God's presence, and Bariah is being overwhelmed by his presence. So I would say when day-to-day life is definitely Asiyah, when you're going around, when you're going about your day-to-day, your errands, picking up the kids from school, eating your breakfast, waking up, going to sleep. Yitzirah is when you're feeling a bit spiritual, I don't know, inspired. If you come to prayers on Yom Kippur and you kind of get a bit inspired, that's you sense what you're actually sensing is God's presence. And Bariah doesn't usually happen, and that can happen unfortunately before someone passes away, right before someone passes away, or great people live like that, like a tzaddik, a not just a righteous person, but like a rebbe, someone who's completely aware, constantly aware, is living Bariah. That's what differentiates us and those people. They're not like angels or anything. They're living a different. They're living with more awareness, more reality. I mean, it's like someone which is into recycling. You know, they're always aware of the environment, right? I myself, I'm going to confess, I'm not always aware of the environment. Don't always think about it. I recycle when I can be bothered. When I can't be bothered, don't always. To be honest, or when it's too much going on to take the bottle outside. Don't tell anyone. So I'm like an Asiyah of recycling. Sorry? Yeah, exactly. Yitzirah is someone who is usually recycling, daily, he's always recycling. And Bariah is someone who is completely absorbed with saving the environment. That is their entire identity. The same thing with God. Some people, that's all they talk about, right? That's all they go on about is the environment, the environment, the environment. Right, we need those people around as well. They keep us on our toes. They keep us aware. Oh, what's this? This is the video. I don't know if you have sound or not.
It's Judaism's mystical wisdom. It discusses souls, the deeper meaning of things, and the spiritual system of the heavens. Never heard of this heavenly system? That's okay. Why don't we do what Kabbalah does best? Offer a parable to explain something abstract. You decide to build a home.
This is a summary video.
Subconscious. Sense the enormous pleasure of dwelling in a
Can you hear?
suits you. That spark of pleasure that invades your brain's desire center. I want a home, you tell yourself. Immediately, with intellect grabs the wheel. You logically justify your desire and analyze the possibilities. Your emotions chime in. What do you feel about this location? Am I comfortable with high windows? You carefully rethink your plan. You discuss it with friends and are finally ready for action. Dine, build. What's all that got to do with heaven? The Kabbalah reveals that when God decided to create the physical world, God first created an entire spiritual system that parallels the experience we just described. In this first video, we'll take a quick look at the final three stages of this system. In each subsequent video, we will climb one level higher as we explore the supernal chain of command. The mystical work titled the Zohar discusses the existence of three spiritual worlds that precede our own. Their names are Rabbi, Yetzirah, and Asiya. These worlds are inhabited by angels and souls before they descend to earth. Those who have passed away and flourish in the afterlife. In Hebrew, the word Beria means to create something from nothing at all. So in a spiritual world of Beria, for the first time in the entire system, things exist that are aware of their own existence. We feel independent outside of God. That's amazing, because nothing is independent of God. But in Beria, God hides his presence to enable entities to emerge with a sense of self. Nevertheless, the angels and souls that inhabit Beria feel tremendously close to God and are completely focused on God. Everything here is fragile, extremely close to losing its identity and being blissfully overwhelmed by proximity to God. So, God took it one step further and created the spiritual world of Yetzirah, which means to give shape to something. This is where the sense of independence from God truly begins to take shape. Here, God hides his presence to a far greater degree, which allows the spiritual inhabitants of Yetzirah to develop greater self-awareness. That said, God is still sensed in the spiritual place. And so, God made Asiya, which in Hebrew implies a complete and final product. From its perspective, the sense of independence from God is complete. Asiya has two linked layers. Its top layer consists of spiritual beings, and in its lower layer is our physical universe, the tangible, material world we know so well, where we struggle to relate to the divine force that continuously creates us. The good news, even as we reside in the physical Asiya, our souls keep a connection with those higher worlds from which they emanate. The spiritual Asiya helps us peer beyond the physical. Yetzirah empowers us to suspend our self-focus long enough to sense God's presence. And Rabbi helps us feel blissfully overwhelmed by God's presence, at least momentarily, such as in a moment of meditative prayer. So, we walk planet Earth, but at the same time, we can be firmly rooted in the bliss of spiritual loftiness.
All right. There you go. We are on page does anyone know what page we are? Yes, page 14. The human example. So now we have Bria Yitzira Asiya. Now we're going to talk about the three components of human behavior that came from Bria Yitzira Asiya, that mirror Bria Yitzira Asiya. An analysis of mortal thought, speech, and action that identifies the distinctions unique to each of these functions provide an analogy through which to understand the nature of Biyah and the distinctions between these worlds. Right? So we said at the beginning of the class that Mivtsari Echze Elokah, which means I can understand godliness from looking inside myself, my soul, right? My flesh. So that's what we're going to do now. We have three soul garments, they're called, which means three tools for behavior. And those are thought, speech, and action. Right? Machshava, dibur, and maaseh. Right? Now, in order to understand the relationship between these and biyah, we have to understand that we have to emphasize, they're just behaviors. They're not, it's not your identity, right? What you say and what you do, and even what you think is not you. It's what you're doing. It's not your soul, right? It's your choice, right? Now, if you have a pen, write this. 2 + 2 = 5. I love moldy tofu. Yeah, write it. Now, once you've written that, you don't have to write it if you don't want to. Say 2 + 2 = 5. I love moldy tofu. Now everyone can say it. 2 + 2 = 5. Now, think. Everyone think. 2 + 2 = 5. I love moldy tofu. And I want you guys to try and attach yourself to this. Not just think about it, but try and create a reality where you love moldy tofu and 2 + 2 = 5. So obviously, did it work? I trust it was a failure. And obviously this demonstrates this point that you can say something and you can do something and you can think of something, but it's not you, right? At the end of the day, it's just a behavior. Now, you can look again on the map and you can see the human soul, which the part of the human soul which corresponds to Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya, Biyah, is thought, speech, and action, right? Because the behaviors, thought, speech, and action are not part of you, part of your soul, it's easy to change them, right? It's easy to change your action, it's easy to change your speech, and it's easy to change your thought. You can't stop thinking, but you can think about something else. But you can't change your soul. Sorry, you can't change your soul. Your soul is who you are. You can't change your soul. It's you. It's your identity, right? You can discipline yourself. You can train yourself to think a certain way, a mindset, to speak a certain way, to do certain things, right? You can't change your soul because these are merely behaviors. These are called garments of the soul, right? And also they can operate in ways that contradict the soul. They can be changed, and they are garments of the soul. They have their own identity. They correspond to Biyah. Right. Now, you see key term, our next key term is Levushay HaNefesh. Key term number 1.5 is Levushay HaNefesh. which is the soul's garment. The thought, speech, and action are the soul's garment. The reason why they are called the soul's garments is because just like a garment you can change, so too you can always change your garments, so too you can change these, right? Now we can appreciate the how the relationship between our levushim, our levushay hanefesh, our levushim, our garments, correspond to the relationship between Biyah and God. Biyah, as we said, Bria is the least ego, Yitzira is a little bit more, and Asiyah is entirely. The same thing is with thought, speech, and action. Thought is the least, is the most attached to the soul. Speech is less, and action is even less. Text number 6a on page 15. Naomi, would you like to read that?
Bria, Yitzira, and Oshy are comparable to physical garments. We can always remove our garments and dress in alternative garments because garments are not part of our essential self. In this life experience, this correlates to thought, speech, and action which are not relevant to the core of the soul, but serve only as its garments.
Right. So Bria Yitzira Asiyah corresponds to thought, speech, and action, machshava, dibur, ma'aseh, and actually on an individual level as well. Bria is thought, Yitzira is speech, and Asiyah is action. Now, you sometimes can't find the words to describe how you feel. Has that ever happened? It happens a lot, right? You feel a certain way, or even you think certain things, but your words can't bring it out. So you say, I have no words. What does it mean, I have no words? And the reason for that is because thought is the closest to your identity, to who you are, to your soul, and then speech. Then speech is further, so sometimes it won't reach there. You won't be able to express it. And action is the least, because action is actually so thought is connected constantly to your soul. Speech is something which is disconnected but coming from you directly. So if you speak to someone, they are relating to you. Action is something disconnected from you. You can do something and walk away, and no one would know it was you, right? You can build something and walk away unless you've signed it. No one knows it was you. Right. Thought senses the soul's feelings forcefully, constantly there, remains unknowable to others, right? And that is Beria, the least ego, right? The most connected, the most unullified. Speech, it's not constantly, at least not most people's speech. You can sense observable outward expressions. You can sense the expressions, and there is no separation between the words and the speaker, and it's not tangible. That's Yitzira. Action is completely outside of us. It exists completely outside of us, and it is physical and it is tangible, right? You can create something and just walk away, and you can leave it, right? And that's how it matches up. Now, if you look on page 17, you'll see the worlds and the garments. You can see that again. Bria. So first it's self, then Bria is thought. We can think of nonsense, and of concepts that contradict our genuine opinions and feelings, right? You can think about something which you don't believe in the whole day, which you know is wrong. You can switch our train of thought from one topic to another. Speech, you can't always convey the full intensity of your feelings. You can communicate ideas and emotions to others, which is Yitzira, a little bit less one with God. Asiya is tangible creations. All right. Now, in your student book, you first of all, I'll give a summary, and that is thought, speech, and action are the garments of the soul, and they correspond, and their source is Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, which is Bia, and that's why they resemble Bia many ways, right? Bria is thought, Yitzira is speech, and action is Asiya. And here we see how the Seder Shtalshalut, the devolution, the divine ladder is already corresponding to the human soul. So some people would study Kabbalah completely in the spiritual and then talk about it in the physical, or leave that part out. But as I said at the beginning, because it's all about relevance, so we're going to do that. Like, we're going to talk about spiritual, physical straight away. In your books, which, by the way, you're welcome to take home and not lose. I actually have a few extras, so even if you do lose, I've got you covered.
Can you write it?
Yeah, sure. It's yours. It's so in your books, you have, we're not going to talk about this, but on page 18, you have all the souls and the angels and all these things, different types of angels, how they exist. We are going to skip that. Right. How is this all relevant? How is Bia, today's concept, relevant in our lives? Humans struggle with tendencies and character traits. We can be too harsh on ourselves and too easy on others, or the other way around. Even if we don't define ourselves by our flaws and by our problems, they cause us stress, right? They are part of our lives. Now, see, everyone have a look at this list on page 22. You have a list. Peruse, what does that? Does that say peruse? Peruse, never heard of that word. The following list and mentally identify one trait that does not pose a challenge for you. Then mentally identify one that does. Okay, you don't have to say it, just think it. All right, you don't need to write it, just think it. This is an exercise of personal reflection. So you can have a look and see one thing which is a problem for you, and one thing that is not. You know that you are good. It shouldn't take long. Learning about Bia gives us insight, and very important insight regarding our own character flaws, right? And that is just like Bia is outside of God, and it's independent. So too our thought, speech, and action aren't us, right? They are something outside of us. They are something outside of us. They are garments. It's not saying not to take I'm not saying not to take responsibility for what you do, but I'm just saying don't define yourself by what you do and the way you think. You can always improve. Page 23. Talia, would you like to read the text 7? We're going to rush through it a bit because I'm way past the official time.
Thought, speech, and action are merely garments for the soul. Just as we are able to remove the body's garments, so we can remove the soul's garments of speech and action by refraining from speaking or acting. And just as we can exchange one article of clothing for another, so we can switch our thought, which constantly runs from one subject to another. This is in contrast to the intellect and emotion that, as part of the actual soul, demands much effort to effectively change.
Right. So you can live without your will, right? Without your doing what you want, fulfilling your desires. The human being is different from an animal in the sense that a human can go against its instinct, can do what it doesn't want to do, can do can put its thoughts and its feelings and its will aside and do what it believes is right, what it knows is right, right? And this obviously applies a lot in Jewish practice, in Torah and mitzvot, when obviously you can't be bothered a lot of the time, or just, you don't want to, but you just know that this is the system that is right, so you just do it anyway, right? And to explain that story, we're going to skip a little bit. Again, you can have a look at this afterwards, go over the book. Text number 8 on page 25. There's an interesting story about a sage. And some people actually say this was Moshe, a great sage, which sent a picture of himself, a painting of himself, with someone to someone which can read face, like people that used to be able to look on the face of a person and understand their character and what they're like and everything. And so today, people do it with palms and stuff, but it used to be a thing. And he brought the painting to this person, and the person said, "Oh my goodness, I don't want to see that. That looks like the most corrupt, cruel, sadistic person that I've ever seen. I don't want to see that. Keep him away from me. Bloodthirsty, violent person." And the messenger was in shock. This is his great leader. So he goes back to the leader, and he obviously didn't want to tell him, but the leader pulled it out of him, and he said, and the leader said, "Yes, that's true." The leader said, "Yeah, all these things are true. This is who I am. This is who my, that's my tendencies, but I don't control them. I control them. I'm constantly fighting. I'm constantly gaining control of my animal inside and not allowing these things to express themselves." So this guy didn't see what I do or what I think or what I speak. He saw my tendencies, my character, right? So the garments are up for control. We must control them. Okay. Now, decision. Sorry.
This is who I am.
Well, it's very easy to say, "This is me." In every relationship, everyone says, this is me. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. Right? So realistically, they're right, because they're probably not going to change, but they should change. The Jewish attitude is, there's no such thing. This is me. Change. Like, don't do that. You know what I mean? Yeah, change your garments, change your thoughts, change your speech, change your action. And you don't just expect things to change. You got to change the way you think in order to change the way you speak and to change what you do. You have to go to the root of the problem, right? You can't just expect a habit to be, like someone's smoking, right? And he knows it's wrong, but whatever, he smokes. So in order for him to stop smoking, maybe with smoking is a bit different, but I don't know. A bad habit. So in order for him to stop, he's got to first understand that it's wrong, right? Think about that. Process that. Think about what it's doing to him and to his kids and to his wife, and then everyone's, upset at it and whatever. And then he can stop. Obviously, if he doesn't care about that, then he's not going to stop. Now, we can discuss now a second takeaway from these three worlds, the hierarchy is these three worlds, and those are the steps of deciding, right? Okay, we said that even if my natural tendency leans towards arrogance, I can still act modestly. Even if my character is more cynical, I can still speak favorably of others. Even if my inclination is to be anxious, I can still think calming thoughts, right? Now, there are three crucial steps involved in making a decision. First, you think, you strategize, you plan, and then you need to consult with people, usually with friends, with mentors, with a partner. And then you want to implement these decisions into actuality, right? A lot of the time, most times, you should consult with someone, right? most times you're blinded by your self-love and self-absorbance, so you don't always know what's right for yourself either. Obviously, it's easy just to say, I know better, right? But it's important to go through these steps. And this is similar to, this corresponds to Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya. Yeah, and you can actually translate it in other ways as well. Like you have in social media. This is a bit of a in social media. So you should, this is what you should do. A lot of people just post without thinking, but you should first think, right? That should be the first step. The outcome of what you post, what it can happen, right? With what's going on now in the world. So most people, I think, with millions of followers, don't think about the outcome of what's happening. You say something which seems just to you, but through your words, you're influencing kids to attack other people because they're Jewish or they're Israeli or whatever. Right? So people don't realize there has to be this hierarchy of the process. First, you think, and then you see the outcome, what's going to happen, what the consequences of your actions, and then you can consult with someone, and then you do it, right? Exactly. Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. What comes in action has to be a thought first, right? Okay. We're going to jump a bit. The text on page 29, it's from the Rabbi, and he's basically saying that if a functioning person is guided by three things: thought, speech, and action. First thoughts, and then speech, and then action. Basically what I just said. And when you engage in all three things the whole time, you can reach your potential. Your potential in everything. If you find action challenging, you need more asiyah. If you find talking, communicating challenging, if you find it to be a problem, then you need more yitzira. And if you find more planning difficult, you need bria, right? Like planning and thinking things through. And this is the correct way to put on your levush, your clothes. You're not going to put on your jacket and then your undershirt and then your tie. Levushim, the levushei hanefesh have an order. The garments have an order how they should be, right?
Some people have good souls and some people have bad souls. Is that what you say?
No.
It's already determined.
No, we're talking about the garments of the soul. We're not talking about the soul. The garments are external. I can be very handsome and put on ugly clothes, and someone can be not handsome and put on good clothes.
Tendencies I wanted to tell by you, it's already in the design.
There's characters, which is a bit higher, which we're going to do next class. We're going to start about next class, and that is the sfirot. That is the emotions and the seichel. But these are the garments. This is the lowest. This is just what happens most of your day is used up with these garments. We exercise the garments of our soul. We think, we speak, and we do, right? And these things we have complete control on. Not everything in the soul do we have control on, but these things we do. And we're not talking about the soul itself. We're talking about the soul dressing up kind of thing, It's like a toolbox. You have someone with a toolbox and he walks around and he does things with the tools. And then when he's done with what he's doing, he puts the tools away and goes home. The toolbox is not him. He can get a better toolbox. He can change his toolbox, right? How do you say toolbox in Hebrew? Agas kelim. Very good. Okay. And also these three things translate in mitzvot, right? You have some mitzvot or more asiyah mitzvot, For example, any examples? Asiya mitzvot? Tzedakah, very good. The main thing of tzedakah is asiyah, is you do. Doesn't matter your intention. You know that if you walk down the street and a coin falls out your pocket and a poor person gets it and takes it home, you get a mitzvah because you gave tzedakah, right? The main thing is giving.
But the action is more important than the intent.
With tzedakah.
Just
Just one of the only things, tzedakah. Okay, we have mitzvot which are more Yitzira. Oh, Kibbudorim, for example. Respecting your parents. Very, very concrete things. Listening to them, even if you don't want to. Right? Giving them your chair. By the way, it doesn't say you have to think highly of your parents. You could hate their guts. But you still gotta give them respect. The Talmud tells us stories about great rabbis. One of them was sitting in the cabinet of the Roman emperor, and he was really high up, and his crazy mother walked in and spat on him and slapped him in the head. And he stopped what he was doing, and he took her home, and he calmed her down. This is what you have to do, whether you like it or not. So very good. That's another example of Asiyah mitzvah. And then we have some Yitzira mitzvot, which are more speech related, like studying Torah is a balance between thought and speech. Praying is a balance between thought and speech. Speaking kindly to people, that's a speech. Complimenting someone, speaking good words, positive things, those are speech related mitzvot. And then mitzvot which are mainly in the mind, right? Which, by the way, is prayer. Prayer is actually main part of it is thought, is bria, right? Sorry, gratitude, believing in God and thinking positive and things like that. These things, by the way, all have a what's my train of thought? Anyway, so we see how bria, yitzira, and asiyah translate. They start in the spiritual, they translate in our garments of our soul, they translate in mitzvot, and now I'm going to talk about how they translate in every single day. In the first thing you do in the morning, which is modeh ani, right? Modeh ani. Let's go to page number 30, text 10. It's running out. We're nearly done, guys. If the laptop runs out, you haven't missed much. Okay, it was just talking about the last minute. I can. Yeah, you'll just. Yeah. Okay. True. Good point. I have to tell him the. Okay. I just want to see the slideshow. Slideshow is there. Okay. Can I ask Safara, would you like to read text 10?
As soon as we wake up, we should contemplate the call of King Theolon and become aware that the King of Kings is close at hand, and as it is stated, the entire earth is filled before him. It is best to habituate ourselves immediately upon waking to recite Modeh Ani, I think. Living and eternal King, for you have mercifully restored my soul within you. Great is your faithfulness. This will remind us of God's intimate presence and inspire us to rise energetically. Seeing that the Modeh Ani does not include a divine name, we are permitted to recite it before ritually washing our hands.
Yeah. So every morning we have 3 steps when we first wake up. It's like before yoga came, before meditation or contemporary stuff, you have this, which this quote is from Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi in Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. The first thing you do in the morning is you say Modeh Ani. Step number 1, you contemplate God's relevance to your life. That's Bria. So the first thing you wake up in the morning, you visit Bria, one world. The next thing you do is Yitzira. You recite Modeh Ani, verbalizing gratitude for the gift of another day. Right? And that is Yitzira, right? Form, speech, we said, right? The second garment. And then number 3 is washing your hands. We do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. as the priests used to do in the Holy Temple, and that is asiyah. That is the physical action. Okay, we're not going to do that. And there you go. Conclusion. Today we went on an amazing journey. We introduced the concept of Hishtalshalut, started talking about Kabbalah. Hishtalshalut is the chain of events. I can't call it events. The chain, the divine ladder of evolution. And we saw how our lives, we explored 3 new worlds that are very different from our world. And we saw how our lives reflect those worlds through thought, speech, and action. And we also showed how Biyah can enhance our lives by exercising thought, speech, and action, right? And that's it. There's a story about Rabbi Pinchas of Koretz, which was a great Hasidic leader, which once saw a piece of Hasidut, a piece of Kabbalah in the gutter, like a page, and he was very pained by it. So he went to his rabbi, and the rabbi told him a story of there was once a king, and the king's only son was very, very, very not well, and they couldn't figure anything out. And then the doctor said that the only cure he has is if you take a certain diamond and crush it. You crush it and you feed it to the boy. The problem is that the diamond only existed on the crown of the king. That was the centerpiece of the crown. And once they realized that this is the only way to save his life, the king said, of course. So they took the diamond, they crushed it, and the boy wasn't even able to absorb any of it. But they poured it in his mouth, and if only a drop would go in, that would help him. And obviously the drops went all over the floor and everything. So the same thing with Kabbalah and Hasidut, that Hashem loved us. So Rabbi Pinchas of Koretz heard this and he felt better, and he realized that even though these are such spiritual, lofty teachings, even if a drop enters our souls and uplifts us, right, that is already worth it for all the driving back and forth and listening to me blabber for 2 hours and and everything else. It's all worth it if a drop goes inside. Exactly. Anyways, thank you very much. Next week we're going to go a bit deeper, a bit higher up. You can take these books home, you can review back to school. And see you same time, same place next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good. Thank you. Bye, Didi.
Thank you.
No, just these. No, they were here. I'll just take this. I'll just leave it for next week. Think so? איך היה? Good? Good? אתה יכול לסיים את המיטינג? כן, stop recording.